Welcome back to History Now here on ONTV. I'm your host, Anthony Termina, and I'm back with the one and only Donn Hoganson, legendary Lake Orion announcer, coach, teacher, and author of the book History of Lake Orion Football from 1968 to 2000. Coach Hoganson, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Great. It's
Wonderful.
great to be here with you, Anthony. This makes me feel like I'm still young again. You know what I mean?
You are plenty young. You are plenty young. I want to talk about the rivalries that Lake Orion had. Obviously, Adams and Clarkson, but also the big one was always Oxford.
Right. Right.
Oxford, that was today fans see Clarkston as the game, the rivalry, but back then it was Oxford.
No
What's your
question.
take on Oxford?
There's no question. Oxford, at one time, was the only game that counted in the year, okay, in the season. The only game. I mean, you could go 1-8, but if you beat Oxford,
It's all worth it.
North Orion, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay, all right.
Bud Riley's still there.
Oh yeah. Bud left football for a while, and Al Armstrong and who was the big Art Marcel coached football there for a while, but they wanted to bring back the Bud Riley mental toughness. And I can tell you that there were very few games that we lost to Oxford under the Holcomb regime, but there were some. And when that happened, it was not a cordial handshake at the end of the games. The kids always, always the lineup and all that kind of stuff. But there were times when Nick and I, or Marty, or Doug Baker and I, we'd have to run after Doug, and his coaches would run after Bud, because they were going to go at each other. They were running full speed out on the football field, and they were going to and whatever. And so that situations were not very good. The kids seemed to handle it better than the coaches did. But and then there was a gap. You wanted to get into the gap.
I want to get in the gap. Overall, I before we get into that, overall record against Oxford from according to the Michigan football stat line from 1950 to today.
Okay.
Lake Orion is overall 26, 8, and 4.
Right.
Also, there's a trophy out there called the 00 Trophy. Did you ever hold that trophy? What did you think of that trophy?
No, it was.
You didn't hold the trophy?
Well, I wasn't the head coach. Okay.
Right.
Usually the athletic director, because there was such animosity between Doug and Bud. Okay. Right. They looked upon us as South Oxford.
Like we would North Orion.
Yeah, you got it. All right. You're the man, Anthony.
It's still there. It's still there.
Yeah. The trophy was usually passed back and forth between Carlin or Valentine and whoever the AD was or principal at the time at Oxford. So that didn't play much into the scene. In fact, when you mentioned it earlier during the break, it kind of took me aback. But like I said, I'm 73. There's a lot of things that slip away.
Oh, you're plenty young.
Yeah, well, thanks. I appreciate it. Anyhow, you wanted to get into the separation.
Yes.
Okay.
1983 was the last time Lake Orion and Oxford would play each other in football. And then there was that gap until 2010.
Was it 30 years?
I think.
Close.
Close,
Yeah,
yes.
whatever.
But there was that gap.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard a lot of stories about what has happened between Lake Orion and Oxford and why they wouldn't play each other.
Okay.
As a result, Oxford left the Greater Oakland
and went
to the Flint Metro League.
That's right.
While Lake Orion stayed.
Yeah.
What was your take on why Lake Orion and Oxford wouldn't play each other in football until 2010?
Well, I know the reason, okay?
I know. That's why I know. I know.
You said, "What's your take?" I
What's
said,
your
"Hey, I'll
take?"
tell you what."
I know. I know. You know.
Because I was there.
Right. Right.
But the intensity to this day has not stopped.
Correct.
Holcomb, volatile man. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you were playing, who'd you play under? Rich Burrell.
I was 06, so I was
Okay.
Bell.
Okay,
I was
all
the
right,
Bell.
okay.
But I mean, my brother played. But
Yeah, all right, okay.
play.
If Bill grabbed you by the hat and grabbed you like this and said, "You missed so and so," and da 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 da, you know, he'd be fired the next that day, that night, or whatever. It would be all over.
Right.
But that's the way Bud Riley and Doug Holcomb were. Okay.
Bud still does that today a little bit. I think
he's old school.
Yeah, he's very old school.
He's old school.
Yes.
To put it mildly.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyhow, what happened was artificial turf was out of the question. Okay. So what happened during an Orion-Oxford home game was the Oxford kids, like I said, the fencing wasn't really good. The access to and Orion prided themselves on that for the community being able to go up and use the track, which is good, you know, really good. I mean, you're paying for it,
right?
Okay, so you might as well use it.
Yes.
So Oxford came down and they poured gasoline or kerosene on Orion's field at midfield, and then they lit it. Okay, so this is like on a Wednesday or Thursday night. Okay.
Before the game on Friday.
Oh yeah. So when they burned it, when we showed up for the game that night or whatever, there was Oxford you can't grow grass overnight. You know? Okay. Well, then the next year the game was at Oxford. Okay. Now, the legend is that the Orion kids burned down the Oxford press box. Okay. Which was a real tall, skinny thing at those days, all made of wood, okay, and whatever. And I have a tendency to believe that, okay. However, it might have been Orion on the Oxford field in kerosene, and they lit it, okay. And the athletic directors and the principals decided, hey, you know, what's next, okay. So they stopped playing. The intensity and the rivalry just got to be too much. As a matter of fact, haven't the Orion supporters been accused of kerosening or gasolining the blue turf at Oxford? I think not too long ago, like 3 or 4 years ago.
There was an incident where there was alleged graffiti that was designed on there. I think that's what you're referencing, that there was alleged graffiti that allegedly that Lake Orion people were responsible for.
Okay.
I've come to find out that that was not true.
Okay.
But there's some others in Oxford who tend to blame Lake Orion for him, and it's just.
It was something with the turf.
It was something. Yeah, it was. They vandalized the graffiti, made a inappropriate picture, and put the words LO on it, and it was. I mean, I don't I don't want to believe that.
You've been an intense part of the program,
right?
Almost as long as I had been. But you know, what really would have hurt Doug. And what really did hurt Bill Reese was when the first game was played. I don't know about Chris. When the first game was played in 30 years, okay, probably over 10,000 people there. The 50-50 raffle was $500. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes,
okay.
I was at that game in 2010. I was on the field in 2010.
All right.
It was. I remember that game very well. That was 45-6 Orion.
Yeah.
And that was it was in that place. It was standing room only for that one because so many people came to that game. It was unbelievable.
Now you referenced Hazel Park, Avondale, and whatever.
Avondale, Clawson.
At the end of the season, if we were playing one of those teams even back in the 70s, it was standing room only. But what really put a scar in Bill Russell, Celtics, Bill Reese's heart was the biggest game in 10 or 20 years. Okay, where's the marching band?
Oh, they were out in They were at the. They were out camp.
Schedules are made a year ahead of time. You know, there wasn't a.
They were out at that. They were out at the camp.
Yeah.
And they had their band camp at that time, so they were not there at that game.
Yeah.
But still, he still had a massive crowd there.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. But you know, sometimes you get some of these people that think that they went to a band concert and a football game broke out. You know? I mean, come on. When you go to my son, I took my son to a Western ball game in Western Michigan.
Yep.
And their band covers the whole field, you know, and whatever. And the baton twirlers and whatever, they don't have that so much anymore. It's flag bearers and whatever. But there's no question that there's an outstanding band and no question that outstanding drum corps and whatever.
Right.
But you would have thought that with a little foresight that the biggest game in 20 years, somebody would have been there. But that's getting off football.
Right.
That's politics.
Right.
Okay.
One thing I want to bring up too is back in the 70s, Lake Orion started to renew its rivalry with Clarkston. They had played 3 years from 1953 to 1956, but in 1977, Lake Orion renewed its rivalry with Clarkston.
Right.
Clarkston at that time was in the Wayne-Oakland Conference.
That's right.
And so how
You've really done your homework.
Yeah, I've worked a lot of going back to my days working as an archivist for Lake Orion sports.
All right.
But with Clarkston and Lake Orion playing each other, what were those games like back then? Were they just like regular?
Intense.
They were just
Kurt
as intense?
Richardson is a prancer. You know, I don't know. Have you ever seen him walk?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, he's a prancer. But they were really intense and took over. Of course, when we didn't play Oxford, what was the biggest game? The Clarkston game. Yeah, okay. And I think even when we do play Oxford now, that the biggest game is still the Clarkston game.
Yes.
And I was coaching when the Fife kids went through.
Yep.
Okay. I was coaching 7th and 9th grade basketball in those days when Dane and Dugan went by, and they were at the junior high or whatever.
Yep.
And we'd play against them and sometimes beat them. But those were, and Kurt Richardson and I were JV baseball coaches together. So our relationship must go back, let's see, 15 years for the 2000s and 20, 25 years, whatever. And he worked his way up through the system to become the head coach and now is a state power.
Yep.
And those games are and still, it's like one's trying to outdo the other,
right?
You know, but Kurt is not a Bud Raleigh,
right?
And Kurt is not a Doug Holcomb,
right?
And Chris Bell is not a Doug Holcomb,
right?
You know, what better person could you play ball for than Chris Bell, right? Okay, I mean, I love him like a son. And Kurt is that same way.
Right.
Like I said, he sent me the championship. Wanted me to wear it so bad. Because he said, I'd like to be there and see Bell's eyes or Reese's eyes, you know, or walk in the field house. You know what I mean?
Oh, boy. That would be something.
Yeah.
Another one I want to talk about is Rochester Adams. From 1976 to 1988, we always played Adams week 1 of the season. What were those games like?
Well, when Max Hass was there, Max Hass was he was a Holcomb kind of guy. Okay, real intense, shaved head before they were in style. Okay, one of those guys. And they were intense, but not as intense as an Oxford, a Clarkston. And as the season went on, those games became, the following games became more important, okay?
Yes.
So Adams wasn't a breather,
Right.
by no means, okay? Especially when they had this former Detroit Lion as a coach, and they began to open up and become a power, and they began to throw the ball too, okay? And I think they had a couple of all-state quarterbacks during that time. So those were games that you took with, if you sat back and didn't do your homework or whatever, you know, look out. You know? Orion was usually favored
Right.
in those games, but that's on paper. You
Right,
know?
that's on paper. That's not, you have to go and play the game.
You're right. Nothing happens until there's a coin toss
Right.
and the hitting starts. And
Right.
that's why a lot of coaches will say that the first hit of the game is the most important hit
Right.
because you're sending a message, you know. Don't go to sleep.
Right.
Look what happened to Clarkson at the Jesuit
Yes.
game. They went to sleep for 6
in
seconds,
basketball, yes.
and the guy scored a bucket
Yep.
and won the game.
Yep. Last one I want to talk about, rivalry, before we go to break, is Romeo. Oakland County versus Macomb County. That's seen as kind of one of the bigger Oakland-Macomb County rivalries. What's it like facing a team from another county, in particular Romeo?
They were tough teams.
Smash mouth, physical, barn burners?
I can't remember any of the coaches, but when I was coaching, we played right behind the old high school where the baseball field is with the short fence. Okay. I don't think it's there anymore, but
Right.
Dan Barnaboe was the
Yes.
athletic director.
His field's name after him at the middle school.
That's right. Yeah, you're right.
The Mud Bulls.
Yeah, Anthony, you're something else. But anyhow, I can't remember any of their coaches, but I do know that those were tough games. And we had, when the football field was right behind the high school, we had a biology teacher by the name of Paul Bednar. And he used to do the games for $5 for film the game, 16 millimeter films. But at Romeo, they didn't have a press box or a film thing, okay? And they had like a little shed or whatever. And Paul Bednar bought telephone pole shoes.
Oh, wow.
And he used to climb the telephone poles, believe it, and he was an avid hunter. So he had a deer hunting thing that you would sit on and wait for the deer to come, you know, and he would sit there and he would film the games.
That is awesome.
Yeah, never come to a practice, never whatever, you know,
Wow.
but was interested enough in the players and the coaches. He always said he liked me, but he was doing that before I came here.
Right.
So what can you say?
Right.
But
That's awesome.
Romeo was tough. Romeo was tough. And
They still are today.
With Chippewa Valley.
Yeah, Chippewa.
Yeah.
Chippewa Valley, yes.
Yeah. Lapeer handed Romeo their lunch, though,
Yep.
up in Lapeer the first
Yes.
game last year.
Yep. That was a good game, too.
I didn't think Lapeer was going to go as far as they did and
I didn't either.
Err a couple mistakes at the Clarkson game, and
Right.
it might have been overtime.
Right.
A missed extra point
Lapeer
and a
could have
field
won
goal.
that game, too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? I
You
mean,
never know.
you never know.
From night to night
Right.
what's going to happen.
That is true.
Okay.
Well, when we come back to History Now, we're going to discuss Mr. Hoganson's transition from coach to announcer. And also, he's got a wonderful conclusion here on History Now on ONTV. Hello, Lake Orion and Oakland County. This is Sammy Termina here, talking a new show here called OA Now. We're going to talk about sports from football to basketball to volleyball to track and field to soccer, cross country, etc. here on OA Now on ONTV. Welcome back to History Now here on ONTV. I'm Anthony Termina, and I'm with my man, Mr. Donn Hoganson.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I want to talk about the transition for you from coaching to announcing. Obviously, as an announcer myself, it's a very unique craft to have.
Right.
And to be the voice of the Dragons for so long as you have had for football, and also for
Press.
basketball, you got nominated for Oakland Press Announcer of the Year.
Yeah.
What's it like making the transition from coaching to announcing?
Okay. I was a basketball coach coaching football. And don't get that wrong. I loved it, okay? Plus, Holcomb was a great football teacher, okay? Everybody has their downside, but he was a great football teacher, okay? And so I love that. After not a few years, maybe 10 or 12 years, the last game I coached was at Hazel Park. And this was before playoffs, so the first game of the season wasn't until the second or third week of school, okay? And that gave kids, we could recruit kids that get their 3 weeks worth of practice in and still play a part of the team. Maybe not for the first game, but for the second game. Okay, that was one of the positive things. But there weren't any playoffs, so playoffs has forced the August games. Okay, so when you played in the middle or the end of November outside, okay, in the rain and in the snow and whatever, and I would at the same time I'd probably still be having basketball practice, okay, and getting ready. And then the sport that I loved to coach the East was baseball, and yet it was my my most successful sport, okay? Better winning percentage than Sparky Anderson. Anyhow, I loved that too. We had a crack team up there. I think it's Gail McNally, Doug Klein.
Yes.
Both
McNally and Klein very well.
Yeah. And McGraw used to be up there. Jim McGraw. In fact, when I was coaching, I think Jim McGraw was the announcer, and the band instructor, Rob Shadle, announced the JV games on Thursday nights. And he was totally committed to sports, whether it was a pep band at basketball games or the marching band at football games. He was something else. He didn't tolerate any messing around and whatever. So I went to the booth, and it was sort of like a Dick Purton show up there. Okay, a couple of times we'd even get caught with the microphone up. Okay, and that was embarrassing. One time it was so embarrassing I nearly threw up, and they grabbed me by the hair and they pulled me up and they said, "Hey, come on, we got a game to announce here. Get going." But I used to like muffling the last 3 words of the champion, or the 50-50 ticket, or your truck is on fire.
Oh my goodness, I remember those.
Yeah.
I remember.
And I seemed to have the voice, you know, to do it. And I would get excited. I mean, if a guy caught the ball and he was, you know, going for a 65-yard, you know, touchdown. Toward the end, I started using he could go away from all the way from the ESPN guy. But I like that. And then especially with the accolades that came. In 2006, Okada gave me an outstanding achievement award for dedication to youth. Okay, and then I was on the back page of the Oakland Press for something about Friday nights, the fire on Friday nights, or the glow on Friday nights. And
you got mentioned by Cosmo a few times.
Yes.
You know who that guy is. We won't say it on air.
Okay, all right, as a #1 announcer in Oakland County. And when I got there like this for the interview, one of the guys asked, I don't know whether it was Cosmo or whatever, where did this guy come from? And they said, well, you talk to the fans and you talk to every announcer in the Oakland A, and they'll tell you that Don's the best, and he's also the funniest. You know? If somebody had a birthday, like a teacher or whatever, or somebody that was a big fan or whatever, even though it was their 35th birthday, you'd say, you know, and not turning 68 tonight, and or whatever, and we'll be greeting guests at her home after the game, and maybe put even the address out. You know, I don't know if anybody ever showed up for that, but whatever.
That's so fun.
It was. #1, Doug loved the game. #2, I loved the game. McGraw loved the game. Shadle loved the game. Gail loved the game. And there was, the guy that's still doing the spotter, George Stringer.
Yes.
Yeah, he loved the game, okay? Even the president of Oxford Bank was up there for a while. His name slips me right away, but his daughter played basketball for me. But anyhow, all these people loved the game. And then some of them would sit close to the booth because even though the mic wasn't on, it would be a Dick Burton type of thing going on inside, and we'd be laughing and chuckling and whatever. And they'd want to know what was going on inside the booth. And Mr. Cass, believe it or not, I was a heavy Diet Coke drinker at the time, okay? And Mr. Cass came up one time and smelled the Coke. You know, like, you guys got to be high up here or drunk or whatever, you know. I don't know whether he was kidding or not, but he didn't have a kidding look on his face. You know.
You guys were always very, very entertaining. You were very entertaining up in the booth. I mean, I got to hear your voice the early years when I was in high school, and it was exciting.
I loved what I was doing. I loved teaching, very rarely missed a day. Okay, I loved coaching. All three sports, okay? And I loved being in the booth. And I think you could tell that. It wasn't a task. I'm not an early morning riser, so the only thing I would regret was when school started at 7 o'clock. I had to get up at like 5:30 living in Lapeer to get there on time, okay?
Right.
And I never understood that philosophy because the year that they started it at 8 o'clock, the flu things were down and attendance was up 25% or whatever. But a lot of kids in the early or late 60s and early 70s had almost full-time jobs.
Wow.
And Gene Wurtenberger, the head counselor at the time, said, well, we get out of school early or whatever so that the kids can go to work, okay? It was different, Anthony. There weren't that many year-round homes on Lake Orion.
Right.
Okay? They were cottages. And what does it say on the sign, Lake Orion?
We're living as a vacation.
There you go, okay. And that's what Lake Orion was known for.
We're living as a vacation.
Yeah.
We're just about out of time, Mr. Hoganson, so I want you have any final thoughts?
Yeah. The last paragraph of my book says, and so it's been a treat organizing and writing this small history of Lake Orion football from 1968 to 2000, that era as I remember it. I believe the book to be quite accurate, and hopefully will bring many fond memories for people like Ron and June Smith. June was a former secretary, and Ron's one of those guys that puts the blanket out the night before and whatever. And the whole Lake Orion community, both fans and players and parents and everyone involved in these wonderful years. So I close with, together we are, or if you cannot play a sport, be one, and every human being has a basic dignity that must be respected. I leave you with hopes that we will meet someday, and long live the Dragon Empire. Coach Hoganson.
Thank you very, very much, Mr.
God
Hoganson.
bless you.
God bless you too. I would definitely recommend you to get the book, The History of Lake Orion Football, 1968 to 2000, were written by Mr. Donn Hoganson, Coach Hoganson. Thank you for coming on, Coach.
God bless you, Anthony.
And we'll be back soon, Lake Orion fans. Have a good night from History Now here on ONTV.